All right, let's finish up Chapter 18 by talking about what happens occasionally when we lose control of how these genes and their expression are regulated, particularly genes that govern the cell cycle. So you have typically cells called oncogenes. And oncogenes are normal genes, I should say, that everyone has in their cells that stimulate the cell cycle to move forward. They stimulate you to undergo mitosis and have cell division. You also have normal genes called tumor suppressor genes, which stop you from undergoing cell division when it's not an appropriate time. Normally with cancer, you have to have mutations in these proto-oncogenes or these tumor suppressor genes in order for you to lose control of that cell cycle. So you can think of these proto-oncogenes as the gas, right? They stimulate you to go forward and divide. And when they undergo mutations, which cause sort of the gas to be stuck down, right? You know, remember there was an issue several years ago with like Toyotas where the gas pedal would get stuck down and you'd have this out of control acceleration. That's what happens when proto-oncogenes have mutations and become just oncogenes. Oncogenes are cancer-causing genes that mutated from proto-oncogenes. So your proto-oncogenes, several things could happen. One, you could get a proto-oncogene that could be placed in a new spot next to a different promoter. And it might be a better promoter that causes more transcription, right? And then you are going to make more of this protein that's going to stimulate the cell cycle. You may also get weird extra copies of the same gene, which could cause you to make more of the protein product. Or you could have a point mutation either within the gene or within the control element that, again, stimulates extra product. All of these are turning a proto-oncogene into an oncogene, and the gas becomes out of control. Tumor suppressor genes are kind of like the brakes. And if you recall, you had several checkpoints, right, in the middle of the cell cycle where you stopped, took stock of things, made sure it was an appropriate time to divide, make sure your DNA didn't have mutations that you had to repair before division, make sure that you had appropriate cell adhesion, that you weren't going to have chromosomal abnormalities. Anyway, these checkpoints are caused by tumor suppressor genes, which make products that hold things up when it's not an appropriate time for cell division to occur. And these are like the brakes, and if you cut the brakes, you can also get out of control movement. So in this case, out of control cell growth. One common proto-oncogene is the ROS gene. And the ROS gene can become an oncogene with certain mutations. P53 is a very common tumor suppressor gene that, again, with certain mutations, if that P53 changes, that can cut the brakes and keep you from inhibiting the cell cycle in inappropriate times. And both of those things can lead to increased cell division. So if you have a hyperactive ROS gene, it makes more ROS protein, and that's going to create more protein that stimulates the cell cycle. P53 ends up serving as a transcription factor for a gene that inhibits the cell cycle, and if you are not making P53 appropriately, it doesn't effectively make that stop sign, and you can end up going through the cell division when it's not appropriate. Usually, it takes both kinds of mutations, right? Generally, multiple mutations are necessary for cancer to occur. You have to turn a proto-oncogene into an oncogene. You also have to have a tumor suppressor gene that is damaged. And P53 is one that's involved in a whole lot of cancers. So this is what your normal colon cells look like, for instance. If you lose a tumor suppressor gene, something like that, you can end up with little benign growth. So this is extra growth, but it's not invading nearby tissues, it's not harming function, it's not spreading. Then, if you turn that ROS proto-oncogene into an oncogene, right, and you maybe lose another tumor suppressor gene, you get a larger growth. Lose another tumor suppressor gene, additional mutations, you may end up with a malignant growth. And a malignant growth is cancer, right? This is where you have cells that are not only multiplying, but are invading nearby tissue, spreading, and that can cause physical harm. Some people already have oncogenes. So these are genes that tend to make it more likely for them to get cancer. And again, you generally need multiple things to go wrong to get cancer, but if you start off with a couple things that are already wrong, you are far more likely to end up with cancer in the end. And BRCA1 and BRCA2 were kind of the first genes discovered like this, and they have to do with breast cancer. And if you have BRCA1 or BRCA2, you are far, far more likely to get breast cancer. And so knowing this can allow you to take precautions to get mammograms more often. Some people will do preemptive mastectomies, whatever you and your doctor decide, but knowing sometimes can help you get treatment early, which often can be the difference between life and death.